All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. All three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Now, today we're going to be reviewing The Likeness by Tana French. This is book number 2 in her Dublin Murder Squad series of mystery novels set in Dublin, Ireland. I've got the entire set here. There's 6 of them so far. I reviewed book number 1, In the Woods, not long ago. I think it was in September I reviewed this. And now we are to book number 2. Now, book number 1 was so awesome. It was great. And book number 2 was even better. Now, I'm going to say right now, the premise of this book is absolutely 100% straight horse shit. It just is. It is bonkers. It is ridiculous and absurd, and it's just nonsensical. And I don't think I can stress that enough. But I loved this book. I loved it. I was so engaged with this, despite the absurd, implausible, incomprehensible premise. And I'll get into that in a second. So anyway, let's talk about, but just remember, I liked it. I liked this a lot. In fact, I liked it more than In the Woods. I was glued to this thing. This book came out probably, God, when did it come out? By the way, it's signed. I got a signed copy of it, too. So it's signed right there. Let's see, this one came out in 2008, so a bit of time ago. So this series has been around for a little bit, 15 or some odd years. It's about the Dublin Murder Squad, which is a group of detectives working out of Dublin solving murders. So each one of the books is about a different person in that squad. This one is about Cassie Maddox. Now let's talk about the cover first, because I love graphic design and cover illustration. This cover is kind of like, the spine is about a 2 out of 10, maybe a 1.5 out of 10. The cover is maybe a 4 out of 10. Most of the covers are all right, they're okay. I don't really mind them, but I don't care for this one. It's like a picture frame. The likeness. I get it. I get why you're doing this. Okay, anyway. Cassie Maddox, who she was probably in book 1 about half the time. She split half the screen with the other character. Oh, what was his name? Detective Sam O'Neill and Cassie Maddox worked together in this book up here. Well, now there's a new murder that's happened. Now, Sam is her boyfriend, so they became boyfriend-girlfriend. Cassie and Detective Cassie Maddox and Detective Sam O'Neill broke policy and got into a relationship. Okay, whatever, it happens. So there's a murder scene, and they go to the murder scene, and the dead girl, and this is the beginning of where it starts to get a little bit weird. The dead girl, they find that Lexi, her name is Lexi. Okay, here's the thing. It's so absurd that I almost can't even spit it out. The dead girl, they roll her over, and she looks exactly like Cassie Maddox, our main character. In fact, they look like twins. They look exactly alike. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, do you have a twin sister? She's like, no, I don't. And do you have any relatives? And well, everybody's got a double somewhere, and they're like, this girl looks exactly like you, and she's dead. And then they go through her things, they search her ID, and they find out that her name on the ID is Lexi Madison. Now, Lexi Madison, so things get even weirder, because Lexi Madison was the alias that Cassie Maddox, the detective, used not long ago in another case involving infiltrating a drug ring. And in that drug ring case, our main character, Cassie Maddox, was stabbed. And it was a very traumatic event for her. But she was going under the alias of Lexi Madison. Well, now this dead girl that they find that looks exactly like Cassie has the same ID that Cassie was using previously in that undercover case. And so now you're like, okay, those are a lot of coinky-dinks lining up. And the people, the characters in the book are like that too. They're like, this is freaking us out. And then the chief of police, the chief of the murder squad, gets a great idea. We can solve this murder since Cassie looks exactly like the dead girl, and Cassie has already pretended to be someone named Lexi Madison. Why don't we have Cassie? Why don't we just pretend that whoever this dead person is, whoever this dead girl is that's using a fake ID, nobody knows she's dead. So she's using a fake ID because she's hiding from something or someone. Her parents don't know nothing. Her family don't know nothing. The only people that would know anything are her 4 roommates who live in a place called Whitethorn House. They're just young people living together in the flat, and they were a tight-knit group. They've kind of sussed this out a little bit in the investigation. We need to investigate this. Let's pretend that, let's tell the media, and let's tell her 4 roommates that she's not dead, and we'll have Cassie, the detective, go undercover again and live with these people. And as she's living with these people, we'll just say, oh, yeah, your friend, yeah, your friend dodged a murder, but surprise, surprise, she's back alive. And we'll just tell the media that, and we'll tell these 4 people that she lived with that. And then our detective Cassie, who looks exactly like the dead girl, will just go back and live in that White House manor amongst these 4 people, and no one will be the wiser, and she'll be able to suss out the whole murder. And I'm thinking, there's no way that that's gonna go. That can't work. There's no way that would work. That was so breaking so many law enforcement violations. So many, oh my God, this is just like, not only that, not only my reaction is the same as some of the characters in the book. They were just like, no way, we're not doing this. This is so stupid. We'll be found out in 2 minutes because we don't know what kind of relationship this dead girl had with her roommates. But then Cassie's kind of like, she's kind of like digging the idea. She's like, I want to pull this off. She takes it as a personal challenge to go live with these strangers. And all these strangers, this is a tight-knit group of roommates. All these strangers know a lot about her, or the dead girl. And the dead girl knows a lot about them. There's a lot of inside jokes, inside information, just things that they've talked about. All of it, you can just imagine anybody that you know. And this happened to me once. I'm not making this shit up. This happened to me once. I went through the police academy with a guy. Went through 3 weeks of the police academy. Knew the guy really well. Graduated the academy. We all went to different areas. He comes and does an overtime. 3-4 years go by. He comes and does an overtime shift with me and my group. And I'm like, hey, you're back. Hey, and we're talking. And like, I'm talking to him. And I can tell there's a disconnect. Like, gosh, my friend from the academy just doesn't seem to be like with it. He's like, got a different personality. It's like what's going on with this guy? Like half the people I'm mentioning, he doesn't remember them. And then finally, after about an hour and a half of dealing with this guy on the job, I finally realized, I was like, hey, are you Brian so-and-so? And he's like, no, I'm his twin brother, David. He's like, I was wondering what all this stuff was you were talking about. And he's like, I figured it was, you probably thought I was my twin. I'm telling you, I got that. I figured that out in an hour and a half. Just like that. I should have figured it out in 5 minutes. These people, these twins, Brian and David, look exactly alike. If they're standing together today, I wouldn't be able to tell them apart. But once you start talking to the guy and you realize he doesn't know what you're talking about, we got to the bottom of it. This is the implausibleness of it. This is just the absurdity of it. The fact that it was so absurd is what I loved about it. I'm like, this would never happen. You would not pose as a dead person. I was like, oh my God. But I was along for the ride, and I enjoyed this ride so much. It was such a fun book to read. And like I said, and that's because the main character, Cassie, really does want to sell this. She does want to go in to Whitehall Manor and live with these people and sell it like she's there. She's jumping at the chance. And then so we get into Whitehall Manor amongst all the four characters. And I'm telling you, each of the four roommates that she lives with, they've all got their own secrets. They've all got their own reasons to lie to her, and because they believe that this, they're freaked out because they all kind of know that this girl was murdered. But now she's back with a pretty plausible story of why she's back. But some of them know more than they know about this murder, and some of them it's a lot of red herrings floating around through this, a lot of misdirection floating around through this, and Cassie Maddox is getting more engrossed and ingrained and in deep, just getting deep into the role of playing, of trying to pretend like she's this murder girl. She's getting deep. She's starting to form bonds with some of these roommates. And she's starting to, it's just kind of like now she's kind of pulling for all these. I think it's this guy's the murderer. No, this girl's the murderer. She's like, well, I don't want this one to be the murderer because that one's really cool. And it's just a really interesting premise for a murder story. And it's just one of those murder stories where it just takes place kind of in that Whitethorn manor house where these guys live in this flat. And it's just like, which one did it? Which one of them did it? Which one of the four roommates is the guilty party? And she's got to do it. And I was as my mind was spinning with the ridiculousness of it all, I was loving every single word of it. It was engrossing. It was tense. It was thrilling. It was just a great drama with some great soap opera-y moments and a juicy murder at the heart of it. Absolutely dynamite book. And, this is the second time I've read it. I will admit I read it a long time ago. It actually made my top 10 mystery novels of all time list, if you want to watch that list. So anyway, The Likeness by Tana French. In my opinion, the strongest of the Dublin Murder Mystery series. Strong just purely off of the absurdity of the premise. And by God, this writer pulled it off with flying colors. 10 out of 10.